This is absolutely brutal. Watch this Trump puppet absolutely fall apart at the most simple questions. It's from a few months ago, but let's not waste any time and get straight into it.
I've got to turn now to, as promised, to Dr. Jan halper-hayes, former Global Vice President of Republicans overseas, as advisor to Donald Trump's 2017 transition team. Dr. halper-hayes, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Do you understand why so many in this country and in Europe more generally would have seen what happened in the Oval Office as an attempt to humiliate President Zelensky and be repulsed by it?
Well, if they watched all 53 minutes, then I don't think they would have that feeling. If they saw clips of it, which of course will be clips of J.D. Vance and Trump being very angry with Zelensky, then of course they would come to that.
Could you imagine President Trump speaking to, say, President Putin in that way? And isn't it precisely the point that he wouldn't, that is part of the problem?
Well, if President Putin pushed him the way Zelensky pushed Trump,
what did
bet.
Zelensky do? What did he do that was so egregious in your view?
Well, one is that he started litigating the 2014. He said, I don't want a ceasefire.
He said he wants peace repeatedly. He just doesn't want it on Russia's terms, which you'll understand because Russia invaded his country.
But he said, I don't want a ceasefire. He made that comment to Trump.
He said he doesn't want a ceasefire if he knows that Putin is just going to renege on it a couple of months later, which is fair enough, isn't it? Because he's done that repeatedly, you will accept.
Exactly.
No, not exactly. I mean, the point is that, of course, anyone wants a ceasefire, but there's no point in having a ceasefire, is there? Which is what Zelensky was saying to Trump, if Putin is just going to renege on it shortly afterwards.
And Trump was saying, how do you really know? I mean, if you're really coming from that position, that no one can guarantee anything. But if you don't move forward to get something into an agreement and then be able to put the right security.
But what has Putin said that gives you or President Trump any indication at all that he even wants a ceasefire? Putin has said he doesn't want a ceasefire at this point.
Putin is... Look, I'm not here to have an argument because you clearly have a position that I don't agree with.
What would that be? What would that position be?
Well,
I mean, we would both agree, wouldn't we, for a start, that Putin started the war?
Yeah, what I would say is that Putin legally violated international law. Morally, he thought he was right, and strategically...
But you would agree that morally he was wrong?
I know I would not agree morally is wrong. I would agree legally he was wrong.
You would agree, you would not think that a man who literally, as we speak, still sends drone attacks to kill Ukrainian civilians is morally wrong?
Oh, and you think that Ukraine isn't doing anything to the Russians?
Ukraine didn't invade Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine. That you wouldn't agree that was morally wrong?
Okay, all right. You know what? That is 3 years ago.
Right. So if we were sat in 1942, would you have been on the radio going, "Look, don't worry about it. Hitler invaded Poland 3 years ago"?
You know what? I didn't sign on for this hypothetical discussion.
It's not hypothetical. I'm just trying to tease out the logic of what you're saying, Dr. halper-hayes.
One is that James Baker and Thatcher and Mitterrand and Kohl, etc., had promised that NATO would not move 1 inch eastward, and that was violated.
Those
so
countries...
you want to look at all the different people that violated their agreement?
When did America start basically just sort of representing what Moscow thinks? Those countries wanted to be part of the NATO club. Your club. Are you saying that they should never have been allowed to exercise their democratic and sovereign rights as nations and join that club?
Oh, God. You know what? I don't like having my words twisted.
No.
I really don't.
You don't like, well, but that's the point of an interview, isn't it? Is to discuss what you're saying. And I'm just asking you, you're saying, with respect, Doctor, I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. You're saying that those countries should never have been allowed to join NATO, and then we wouldn't have been in this situation. And I'm saying to you that surely those countries should have been allowed.
I didn't say that.
Well,
see, that's why. No, hold on a minute.
But you cited what happened in the. So you're saying that it's fine for them to join NATO then?
I didn't say any of those things, and I don't like when someone tries to give words and interpret without understanding. I'm done. Okay. I'm off. I don't like you.
Okay. Well, that's fine, Dr. halper-hayes. Maybe some of the listeners won't like you, but that's fine. I'm entirely indifferent to that. I'm very grateful for your time. Dr. Jan halper-hayes there, former Global Vice President of Republicans overseas. Apparently I'm not going to be on her Christmas card list.
My God. Where do I even start with Dr. Jan halper-hayes? This woman just served up one of the most spectacular intellectual faceplants I've ever witnessed. And honestly, I'm still trying to process what I just heard. So she kicks off by basically saying, well, if people watch the whole 53 minutes, they totally get it. Right. Because apparently watching Trump humiliate Zelensky is like a fine wine. You need to let it breathe for the full experience. Come on, that's like saying, if you watch me punch that guy for a full hour instead of just seeing the highlight reel, you'd understand it was really quite beautiful. But then again, this is where it gets absolutely wild. She essentially admits that Trump treats Putin with kid gloves while going nuclear on Zelensky. The interviewer asks if Trump would ever speak to Putin that way, and she's like, well, if Putin pushed him like Zelensky did. Hold up. What exactly did Zelensky do that was so awful? He basically said, hey, maybe we shouldn't trust Putin to keep his promises because, he's broken literally every single one so far. That's it. That's the great offence. Meanwhile, Putin's out there bombing schools and hospitals, but God forbid we hurt his feelings. The whole thing is completely backwards. It's like getting mad at the kid who got beat up for not wanting to shake hands with his bully. Why can't you just be nice to the person who's trying to hurt you and your entire family? And then we get onto the part that genuinely made my jaw drop. The interviewer points out that Putin is literally, right now, as they're speaking, sending drones to kill Ukrainian civilians. Perfectly reasonable observation, right? Her response? Well, what about what Ukraine is doing to Russians? I'm sorry, what? Ukraine are the country that got invaded, and it is somehow equally responsible for civilian casualties? Come on. It's victim blaming on the highest level. But the absolute peak of this disaster comes when she flat out refuses, to say that Putin's invasion was morally wrong. She'll admit it was legally wrong, like she's doing us some huge favour, but morally? Nope, can't do it. Putin thought he was right, she says, like that somehow matters. Think about that for a second. This woman cannot bring herself to say that bombing schools is morally wrong. She's literally more comfortable condemning Zelensky's negotiating tactics than Putin's war crimes. What kind of moral universe are we living in here? And when Lewis Goodall very reasonably compares this to dismissing Hitler's invasion of Poland, he completely loses her mind. She said that, I didn't sign on for the hypothetical discussions. Hypothetical? You're literally watching the same playbook get ran again in real time. This isn't hypothetical, it's the reality. But here's what really gets me. The exact moment that Lewis Goodall starts following her logic to its natural conclusion, she completely melts down. You're twisting my words. I don't like this. I'm done. Nobody was twisting anything. He was just asking you to own up to what you're actually saying, and apparently that's too much to handle. This is what happens when you spend so much time in an echo chamber that you forget how to defend your positions to actual humans. She probably thought she was going to get some softball questions and instead got asked to explain why she thinks the victim is worse than the aggressor. Reality came knocking and she hung up the phone. And the scariest part of this all is this woman was advising the President of the United States. These are the people making decisions about life and death, war and peace, and they can't even handle a basic radio interview without having a complete meltdown. What does that tell you about the quality of advice that Trump was getting? And what does it tell you about the people still defending this stuff? Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next one.